Oh, efficient.
Itulah. WhatsApp terus jawab tu.
Assalamualaikum. Ya Sheikh Mustafa, you are the first to join.
نعم يا شيخنا.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. How's the sound from there, Sheikh Mustafa?
It's very clear, very clear.
Okay.
So mashallah, it seems a Prof from the following from CIE with Dr. Nizam.
Yeah, so far only 2 of us here, but and maybe a few others may join.
Yeah, that's great.
Via Zoom.
Yeah.
So the camera, macam mana? Fazal?
Yeah.
The camera is
to me, yeah.
okay.
Where is the speaker?
Speaker is in.
Oh, in the camera there. Okay.
So I will switch. I will enter with Zoom as well. Okay, just remain the camera with Prof. Okay. While waiting tu boleh play apa CIE punya yang shorter version tu kan ada kan? We have a shorter video, not the 8-minute one. 8 minutes and then we have I think 4 minutes. So.
Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum salam, Dr. Ayub. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I am fine. How are you? I am.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you for making the time to be with us.
Yeah. That's my prayer. Actually, it is a good and the best opportunity.
I mean, it's 2 p.m. here, so 2 p.m. After lunch and Zuhur. So maybe we may begin a little bit, 5 minutes more. We'll let's see.
Yeah. So we may.
It is now 11 a.m. in Islamabad.
Yeah. But 5 minutes. I was just checking whether it is good or not.
Right. Good.
Oh. Our brother Mustafa Muhammad.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Long time we have not met.
So we will meeting after 5 minutes, I think.
Yes, inshallah.
So for the timing, I should leave it.
No, you can stay, please. I mean, unless you have something else to do.
Yeah.
Please, yeah. We are waiting for.
Do you get time to see the presentation?
I went through briefly, skimming through. It's a wonderful overview of things. So I think that's exactly what we want.
So actually, the topic you given is the riba-free Pakistan by 2027. This is very, very difficult task. So one may keep wonder how this topic has been selected, but good, it is our wish at least.
Well, that was the Federal Shariah Court. What do you call it? Proposal, right? So
yeah.
It
is our effort. It is our effort that we should abide by the verdict, and as far as possible, it should be done. But there are serious issues as well.
Of course.
Yeah. So, on another note, I would like to have such a briefing from you people on the issue of Waqf law in Malaysia. Anytime on Zoom, by you or by any of your colleagues.
What was the topic you said?
Yeah, Waqf law. Waqf law in
Waqf.
Malaysia. Waqf Awqaf.
Okay.
Yeah, how Waqf can be revived in countries like Pakistan. I am working on this, and how it can serve as a means for socio-economic and shared development, shared
Mm.
growth.
Right. Okay, we can probably get somebody to speak on
We
this.
will inshallah manage sometime, and next fortnight there about half an hour discussion. It could be useful. So
Maybe even a panel, Dr. Ayub, somebody talking about Pakistan, somebody
Yeah.
talking about Malaysia, and then we can, have some.
no, Pakistan so far nothing at all. It is unfortunate.
Really? Ah,
No research at all.
ah,
No research, no. There are awqaf, but that only for graves and mosques, nothing else.
hmm,
Waqf there are some trusts, they are working for the health and education, but education is more a business than a trust.
yes,
Of course, there are a few hospitals in Karachi, in Lahore. They are a charity based hospital, but we may not call them the awqaf in the real sense, the
right.
waqf in the real sense. So I have sent this presentation to Prof. Dr. Fahim Khan also.
Very good.
So we will be discussing, inshallah, after a couple of days,
Right.
about making a group of people who may undertake joint effort to prepare a formal blueprint to be submitted to the State Bank of Pakistan and Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs Division, so that they could be, but that has to be with much more details.
Right.
I don't know how that would be done. We will be, I think I will be, we all will be benefiting from today if there are any other suggestions and proposals.
Yeah.
So now it is 11.
Right. Yeah. We just give another 3 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
5, and then we may.
Yeah. No
Time
problem.
2:05.
I am up to you. So.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. Muhammad Ayub.
Assalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
This is Dr. Nizam here. So I will be the MC for today. I will just introduce Prof. Aslam, and later Prof. Aslam will moderate the session, inshallah. So we will give 3 more minutes before we start. Yeah?
Dr. Najdat, welcome.
Yeah.
Dr. Najdat from Turkey. I see that.
Ah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
I send the announcement to Prof. Rahim. So,
Assalamu alaikum. Salam
Thank
to
you.
everyone.
Yeah.
Best wishes.
Yeah, good to see you, Dr. Najdat.
Yes, happy to see you. We met
Assalamu
at
alaikum, Dr.
Istanbul
Najdat.
Nice to see you.
about 2 weeks ago. Alhamdulillah, fine.
Mustafa Omar, congratulations, you are coming to Turkey.
I'm
Yeah.
already in Istanbul.
Are you in Istanbul now?
Yes.
Oh, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, we'll meet once, inshallah. Over Turkish coffee.
Yeah.
it's condolences to us because we
Yes.
lost him.
Inshallah, I'm
Professor
still
Ayub was in
I'm
Istanbul
still connected.
last
Dr.
week.
Nizam.
Yeah. I spent Istanbul, Ankara, and Konya about 10 days.
Alhamdulillah.
Are you happy with your visit?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Good.
So
profile.
Yeah, yeah.
Marhaba, I would be sharing, you allowed me sharing, and you will be sharing the presentation, or I?
I think you can if you are
Yeah.
yeah, why
Yes,
not?
yes.
You can, yeah,
Yes, I would share.
yeah. Do we need to allow him to share? Is it? Can he share or do we need to allow? You can share straight, yeah. Okay. So apparently you can share, but when you're ready, no problem. It's 205.
Okay, so let us start our session, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you everyone for joining our session for today. To begin, let us recite with Ummul Kitab Al-Fatiha.
Bismillah.
Hello.
Okay.
I may start?
Yes, so a minute.
A minute, Prof.
Then Nizam will introduce us.
Okay, all right. So Alhamdulillah, today we have Professor Dr. Muhammad Ayub from Pakistan, who will be presenting one of them is the evolution of Islamic banking and finance in Pakistan. But more importantly, which is our main focus for today, is the current ruling by the Federal Shariah Court in Pakistan for Pakistan to move to a riba-free banking and financial system by the year 2027. So we thank Prof. Muhammad Ayub for this opportunity to have him with us today, and hopefully with the presentation and the discussion after that, we will have some inputs for everyone in order to move forward to a riba-free economy, not only for Pakistan, but also to the rest of other Muslim world. We also have with us today Professor Muhammad Aslam Hanif, the founding director of the IUM Center for Islamic Economics and a very senior professor at the Department of Economics, Kuliah of Economics and Management Sciences, International Islamic University, Malaysia. He will be the moderator for today's session. And to begin, I'll pass the floor to Prof. Aslam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Dr. Nizam. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Before I call Dr. Ayub to make his presentation, I'll just do two things very briefly. Firstly, I'd like to give maybe a little bit of background to everyone who has joined us, how this session came about. I think we all know recently there was, I think in April 2022, there was a Federal Shariah Court. It was a proposal or it was a directive. Maybe we will hear from Dr. Ayub on what exactly the nature of that document was. But basically it was telling the government that it is time to move to a full riba-free economy, giving a timeline of 5 years to do this. And then we had a lot of colleagues, many of them in Pakistan, who were being interviewed and giving their views about how to do this, and and giving their opinions on an important milestone in Pakistan. And then about maybe it was about 2 weeks ago, I received an email which had Professor Fahim Khan's letter that he was writing about this issue. And from what I read in that letter, he was responding to an appeal made by the State Bank of Pakistan to the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And in that appeal, there was some maybe reservations being put forward by the State Bank of Pakistan on this issue of riba-free economy. So I very quickly, I sent an email to Prof. Fahim, and I also gave the CC to Prof. Anis and a couple of other colleagues, just saying that we in the Center for Islamic Economics would be very happy to give any inputs that we can, to help our colleagues clarify and improve on this Federal Shariah Court decision. So after doing that, Prof. Fahim basically requested us to, have our discussion and to give inputs. But I think on our part in Malaysia, in KL, in Center for Islamic Economics, before we can actually really give any good inputs, I think we have to understand the actual situation in Pakistan. And so this is why we thank Dr. Ayub for agreeing to give his views, basically to give an overview of the development and evolution of Islamic banking finance in Pakistan, and then to focus maybe a little bit more on the current issue, the Federal Shariah Court document, the appeal by the State Bank of Pakistan, and his own views about what are the issues and how we can take this discussion further. Very quickly, a brief background about our speaker. I'm sure everybody is very familiar with Dr. Ayub. Not only is he a prolific researcher with academia now, but he was also very much in the industry. He was in the central bank, I believe. He served on the Sharia board of the Bank of Khyber, and currently he is very much in research, being the director of research at Rifa International University. But he has also written an excellent book, Understanding Islamic Finance, which I know we were using in our courses in IIUM. The book has been translated into Arabic, the Malay language, Urdu, Turkish, and more recently, this book, which again I thank Prof. Ayub for sending me. This will be also deposited in the center here, Economics and Economic Policy, Islamic Perspective, in which Dr. Ayub edited and compiled the work. I believe Dr. Fahim and a few others had contributed articles. This will certainly enhance our understanding of Islamic economics and the Islamic economic policy initiatives. So with this very brief intro, I have the pleasure now to invite Dr. Ayub to make his presentation. We have about 1.5 hours, and as agreed with Dr. Ayub, he can take up to maybe 45 minutes to make the presentation, after which we hope, this will lead to a very stimulating discussion and maybe exchange of ideas. So with that very, very brief intro, Dr. Ayub, the session is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Aslam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. First of all, I am thankful to Prof. Arif and the Center of Economics for inviting me for this occasion. So one thing I should clear that I was a member of the Sharia board of one bank, the Bank of Khyber, but not now. So it was till 2018. So otherwise, Alhamdulillah, I have been seeing all these things, but I am no more member of the Sharia board of any bank. So secondly, while I share the presentation, I have made 3 or 4 sections of my presentation. And most important section is are two basically. One, the historical framework, historical perspective, what is the issue and what happened, and the most important then the what to do, what should be the strategy, and what should be the plan to move to fully to full Islamic economic financial system. Between the two, there are 2 or 3 more sections. So first of all, the historical perspective, basically the main difference between the Islamic banks and banking system in Pakistan and in other world is that in Pakistan, the Constitution of Pakistan requires that riba must be eliminated from the economy as a whole as early as possible. This is the main, I could say, main feature of our economy, of our system. Otherwise, you know that Pakistan was among the pioneers of Islamic finance movement. It did a lot of work in 1970s and early 80s. The best possible and the first report on Islamic economics and financial system was prepared by the Council of Islamic Ideology of Pakistan in 1980. And that is very, very important document, and that could be used even now by any country that wants to switch over the whole system to Islamic finance. But unfortunately, we could not do that. So after that, the system which was developed, that was declared un-Islamic by the Federal Shariah Court. This was the issue. So let's start. So Islamizing the whole economy, this is our unique feature, and we are a country, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Quran and Sunnah and the Constitution both say that riba has to be eliminated from the economy. So among 3 countries, we were the pioneers, the other being Sudan and Iran. Now, you know, Pakistan stands nowhere, even not among the 10 countries who are basically in the market. So the founder of Pakistan, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, when he inaugurated the State Bank of Pakistan on 1st July 1948, he particularly advised the research department of the State Bank to evolve banking practices that should be compatible with Islamic modes of social and economic life. Similarly, the objective resolution passed by the first Constitutional Assembly in 1949 says that Muslims would be unable to order their lives in the individual and collective sphere in accordance with the teachings of Holy Quran and Sunnah. So these are the constitution requirement in detail, not only to say that we have to eliminate riba, but the state shall ensure elimination of all forms of exploitation. This is the more important. We can say that if we eliminate riba, if we transform riba, and there is no riba, there could be any other form. No. The Constitution requires all forms of exploitation and gradual fulfillment of the fundamental principle for each according to his ability. This is very important, to each according to his work. So the Constitution make it a part of the principle of policy. There are, as per our Constitution, there are central principles of policy of the state. One of them is Article 38F. It says to reduce disparity in the income and earnings. And sub-article F says to eliminate riba as early as possible. This constitution was accepted, passed in 1973, and now almost 50 years are passed, but as early as possible still at. So in 1980s, we had a progress in the system of Zakat and Usher and Islamic banking. Islamic banking at that time was called NIB, non-interest-based Islamic banking. Now we will call it NIB, non-interest-based. So this was the trade name of the. So then there were 2 main addition in the constitution. The Sharia Court was created in 1980s, and the first level is Federal Shariah Court, and appeal to the judgment of the Federal Shariah Court is made before the Sharia Appellate Bench of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Then the other institutions that are required to work for this are the Parliament, then Prime Minister, Federal Cabinet, President, and its governors of the provinces. So when Islamic banking started in 1980s, the State Bank of Pakistan issued BCD Circular number 13, and very, very important, 3 categories were there and 12 more. So out of them, 2 were basically sale of receivable. It means the purchase of debt instrument also. Similarly, buyback Biolina. So when the system evolved, whole system basically evolved on these 2 bases. So this was the issue. The Council of Islamic Ideology took notice of it, and someone went to appeal before the Federal Shariah Court, and therefore this system was declared un-Islamic by the Federal Shariah Court in 1991. It is interesting to note that these 2 modes were in 1980s only, not now. The regulatory framework that basically prevail now was issued after that, and particularly Sharia Governance Framework 2015 does not allow neither sale and buyback, Biolina, nor sale of receivable, sale of debt. So this was basically the detail of the NIB. I told basically the NIB system was challenged, and the Federal Shariah Court declared the whole system un-Islamic in November 1991. But the government went into appeal, and that appeal remained in the State Bank of in the Supreme Court of Pakistan till 1999, almost 8 years. But in the meantime, from the pressure of different people, there were a number of commissions and number of acts and number of committees, particularly the Sharia Ordinance 1988, Enforcement of Sharia Act 1991. Then there are one commission was under chairmanship of ex-SBP Governor, Mr. Imtiaz Alam Hanafi, and then it was a parliamentarian. Still he is alive, he is Raja Zafrul Haq Commission. These 2 reports contained very, very useful. Both reports had crucial suggestions for transformation of the system. It means that a lot of work has been done, but their work remains in the files only. This is the issue. So the Supreme Court means the bench, Sharia Appellate Bench, SABA, Sharia Appellate Bench, decided the case and rejected the appeal of the government on 23rd December, and advised the government to Islamize the economy by June 2001. But again, the government went into the appeal, and then first they required time for 5 years. The court gave them time for 1 year, and then they basically reconstituted the whole Sharia Appellate Bench. This was very strange. The all members who basically given the judgment of 99, they were removed, and the SAB members were new, and they basically decided the case in favor of the government, and the both judgments of the Federal Shariah Court and that of the Sharia Appellate Bench were remanded back to the Federal Shariah Court with the advice that the issue of riba definition and inflation and other issues may be discussed again. So this is historical perspective. So in light of the judgment, certain task forces or commission was made. As I said, one commission was made by, that is CTFs. CTFs mean Commission for Transformation of Financial System. It was also under the chairmanship of Mr. Hanafi, Governor, State Bank of Pakistan. And there was very two important task force. One in the Ministry of Finance that was to suggest ways how to the government operations may be Islamized, and the other task force was the Ministry of Law. That was chaired by our eminent scholar, Dr. I forgot his name, but very so these two task forces and the commission did a lot of job, and their reports are still with the government. And anyone who want to see these reports or their brief can see in the publication history of the State Bank of Pakistan that was published in 2002 and 2003. In the history, in the publication of the history, the brief on all three reports, all such reports is given. So then there was policy change. It was in the era of non-elected governments, General Musharraf, and the high-level meeting, and it was decided that now no more the transformation of the system, rather the both system will operate side by side, and this was the basically start of the problem. And at that time, it was said that we will be offering choice to anyone go to Islamic Bank, and the other one go to the people of Pakistan. 97% of Muslim, they are Muslim, they want Islamic banking, but there are many issues that we may discuss in the next slide, inshallah. So then the case was remanded back to the Federal Shariah Court in 2002. Or from 2002 to 2013, there was no hearing at all. It started in 2013 October, and from 2013 the hearing continued till April 22. And this decision was announced on 28th April 22. And for this purpose, the Federal Shariah Court circulated a questionnaire that included many questions about riba, about the types of riba, about various kinds of transaction, about the alternatives to various instruments. And particularly, they also included about some products of Islamic banks, whether they are really Islamic or not. So many people, I have written 40 experts expressed their view in detail. I also was appointed as jurisconsult, and I gave detailed as also a brief answer to all these questions. So this was the judgment, or this judgment against basically this as a whole. We see what was the its result and what was the issues. Now we come to the judgment. This Federal Shariah judgment 2022. So salient features are: first, the FSC considered these Arab scholars' view and then decided that that was not the issue, and the definition, the connotation that the Ummah has decided, the Jeddah-based committee and the Ayub and the IRTI and overall all over the world Sharia scholars have decided that the current commercial interest is riba. So they said this is the correct, declared that mainly the Arab scholars, they had expressed apprehensions which could be adequately dispelled or removed. They concluded that all forms of interest are prohibited due to being riba. About riba al-fadl, there are some issues. They went into detail that any exchange of riba-free commodities, right? It could be as wheat or barley and dates. The exchange should be hand to hand, but they did not include this the exchange of money. This is very important, and I think we think that why it happened does not court does not specifically indicate the need for hand-to-hand exchange of monetary unit and currencies. So this is very problematic because on this basis, some scholars, particularly in subcontinent Indo-Pak, there is the issue that the fatwa is given of salam in currencies. So if we allow salam in currency, then there is no issue. It does not remain an issue. While the Ayub Sharia standard does not allow, so this thing actually has not been discussed in the court. I don't know what happened, but someone go to the court for further explanation. Then they also expressed their view about the status of the current Islamic banking. You know, many people keep on writing about the problem in the Islamic banking products. But the court concluded that Islamic banking as being practiced under the regulation of State Bank is not a hila. And it observed that every citizen is at liberty to challenge the legality of any such product which is being practiced and acted upon. It means that there was some people who appeared before the court that these products, particularly the tawarruk and many other organized tawarruk I've been talking, it is not really Islamic, but court decided that we will consider it Islamic, and if someone has the issue again, he or she should approach the Federal Shariah Court. The other things were the discuss was the fulfillment of the international commitment, binding and mandatory, very important. The court declared the all fulfillment that any person, any Muslim makes with any international organization or any international institution that should be binding. Similarly, they also discuss response from the international institution and suggested a number of modes that could be used by the government in financing its development projects, particularly Islamic Development Bank and World Bank's deep dive initiative. It was also indicated in the judgment. Similarly, other Trade Finance Corporation and Islamic Corporation for Development, and similarly they also discuss that IMF may consider the Islamic banking to be progressively important. So they also refer to the sukuk that could be used by the government for raising funds, and then they refer to the standard, particularly the standard issued by Ayub and indicated that if these standards are implemented, this could be the best for Islamization process of the economy. So the issue is that certain laws that the court did not discuss, only the reason that these laws were not challenged. So the court did not discuss. These laws are Public Tax Act 1944, very important. All government securities, debt-based securities, bonds, and other, or even sukuk in Pakistan are being issued under this Act of 1944. Similarly, Securities Act 2015, Futures Act 2016, these have not been discussed. And the rationale that court gave is that these laws were not challenged. Now, what the direction they gave for future, they directed that the government is directed to adopt Sharia compliant modes while borrowing either from domestic or from foreign sources, fulfilling the commitment, as I said earlier. Then they suggested the financing of infrastructure development projects. It should be through Islamic modes, and they suggested the following mode: istisna ijara, and wakala ijara, and musharaka istisna ijara based financing, and other modes that would be used by international financiers, investors. On bilateral basis or syndication arrangements, projects like road, motorway, dams, hospital, housing projects, etc. Public sector commercial financing also, this could be on murabaha and commodity murabaha. Courts particularly indicated that it could be used for the purpose of transformation. It could be used. Then CPEC, very, very important for our economy, if it could have been implemented. So conversion of CPEC financing to Islamic mode, if this in the form of debt, actually, you know, the foreign capital may take the form of debt, FDI, foreign direct investment, then it could be portfolio investment. So the best possible way is that it should be in the FDI. Then it should be portfolio through capital markets, and the least have to be the loan and debts, because there could be a lot of corruption in that case. So the court directed, sorry, that the CPEC the project may also be transformed to Islamic mode. Some mode also suggested to convert the public debt to gradualism. The most important is that they accepted the gradualism, and they came to the point ultimately that the 5-year period could be sufficient, and for that reason the times ultimately set was 2027. But here the issues start now. The State Bank says that when the court has accepted gradualism, so the court should have prepared a detailed worksheet how they have they calculated to complete it. So this could be an issue of discussion. Sorry. Another, the challenge laws have been declared un-Islamic, but certain laws have not been taken up. Further, some laws pertaining to capital market have not been discussed. Issue is that the court has basically emphasized or focused on banking laws, all laws that relate to banking, but not on capital market. Hence, FSC, Federal Shariah Court, should have given an overriding section to the effect that any clause in the whole banking, non-banking, SBB laws and capital market that involve interest would require alternative clauses or legislation. For time, here is the issue that court directed that these laws that have been declared un-Islamic will have no effect after 1st June 2022. This is a technical flaw because as per constitutional provision, the judgment cannot be effective in the appeal period. Appeal can be made by any private party within 2 months and by government within 6 months. So this is the issue. The judgment could not be effective technically before 27th of September 22. So this is the basically a technical issue, a technical flaw in the judgment. So the State Bank actually took benefit of this also. Now, another thing that indicated court that is good, that it the responsibility of the some people, some institution, court referred to a systemic procedure of reporting about the implementation. Article 29 says that submission of annual report before National Assembly and the Senate on observance and implementation of the principles of policy, specifically about elimination of riba. It has to be each year. So this is the problem, that this has not been being observed. Now the court has directed that this provision must be observed by the all institution. So now what happened? The State Bank and the 4 commercial banks preferred appeal on 25th June. And as I indicated, as per constitutional provision, so long as appeal remains under consideration, the judgment cannot be effective. So now I don't know what is the status, because the State Bank and other banks have went into appeal. So it is very, I think, apparently it means that that the judgment would not be effective as long as these appeals are decided. But even then, we and other people, as Dr. Fahim Khan has requested, you people, we are duty bound as economists and Muslims to make preparation from our point of view. We should provide the government the whole prototype of this the transformation scheme. Now, what the appeal says, by referring to different articles of the Constitution, State Bank unfortunately again raised the issue of jurisdiction of the Federal Shariah Court. It means that they say that the court is not allowed to even take this case. It is unfortunate. Again, they have referred to views of some Arab scholars, and this reference is indirect by certain references to the review order of the Supreme Court of Pakistan of 2002. Then another point is that Federal Shariah Court declared rules related to saving certificate un-Islamic. If these certificates are un-Islamic, how the government will be taking loan? Then again, 5-year time period is not relatable to any particular law. So the council, the Federal Shariah Court itself discussed the fiqh al-ma'alat. Ma'alat mean what is the consequence, anjam, and fiqh al-waqi. So keeping in view these two principles, the time given should have been more than 5 years. This is actually the viewpoint of the State Bank. Then they say that abruptness in implementation may create uncertainty and instability. And the government of Pakistan, State Bank, and other stakeholders are working for interest-free economy that adheres to the principle of Sharia. This is the point that State Bank, like other countries, is working, and this both systems are also working, and it is possible that with passage of time, the share of Islamic banking might be increasing. So with this, the State Bank views seem to be is that the full conversion should not be the case. I think this is the viewpoint of the State Bank. So other issues are the alternative set of laws cannot be drafted. As I know, as I indicated, the court directed that the alternative laws should be promulgated by end of December 2022, in around 7 months, 6, 7, 8 months. So this is actually a very, very difficult task. State Bank appeal says that it is not easy, and I also think that it is not easy, because preparation of the alternative laws may take time. Then these laws have to be approved by the parliament, and this may take much time. Then the appeal says that indexation and inflation the Sharia Court has not finally decided. Sharia Court discussed it very briefly, but finally it has not been decided. This is actually the issue of the government. Sometimes they say that, for example, an earlier judgment has discussed inflation. The government said why they discuss inflation. Now they did not discuss. They say why have they not discussed it? So issue is that if there are some litigations and there are issues and the inflation has created problem, there could be many problem in resolving some such issues of depreciation and value, but the court did not discuss it simply because no such laws was challenged before the court that contained the impact of inflation or indexation. So the other issue was foreign interest-based approved security held in Pakistan, Rule 9 of the Banking Company Rule, BCR. Banking Company Rules 1963. Under this, the traders in international trade may come to hold such securities if interest is abolished. How they would be getting a return on such securities in case they are exporter. So that raised under the Public Debt Act 40, like DSC, defense. This is defense saving certificates and special saving certificates. This could be for 10, 20, 15 years. So the appeal point was that it could not be replaced within the period of 5 years. Then another issue raised in the appeal is that the court has directed to issue sukuk, but there are not so many assets with the governments on the basis of which issue and the so large amount of debt could be issued. So now the next is how to implement the judgment, basically. So we come to this very important. So transaction process would involve. Now, what is the scope? Where the function or any act has to be done. These are banking system, all kinds of institution that provide checking facility. And here the State Bank could do something, because if there are 5 full-fledged banks in Pakistan, Mizan Bank, the Islamic Bank, and there is one subsidiary, and similarly one bank, Federal Bank, has recently converted to whole. It was a commercial bank. Now it's transformed, converted all its operations to Islamic. If they can work, why not other Islamic bank? So State Bank should have basically done something on this direction, and then it should have gone to appeal. It should be the better process. Although in asking all banking system to shift to Islamic banking is also problematic. There are many issues that we will discuss in next slide, because the bank's investment in government securities, in interest-based government securities, are too huge amount that very difficult to transform this in a few years. So the issue of foreign funding, trade credit, loans, advances, there are issues in the insurance company, non-bank finance companies, nation saving schemes. Public takes many instruments. There are issues. Pension fund, general provident fund, corporate debt companies, and fund taken and invested by the joint stock companies and corporate sector. Here we will discuss the screening criteria. So the government and the public sector enterprises they get domestic as also foreign markets. They get fund from both markets. It would also require simultaneous promulgation of laws as suggested by the task force of the Ministry of Law that was established in the pursuance of the Supreme Court judgment of 99. It means that not only these technical issues, but legal framework has also to be provided simultaneously. So what are the real hurdles, even in Islamization of the banking system only? I was saying that the State Bank could give an order that all banks will be Islamic by 27. It means in 3 or 4 stages, it could be by 26, and then 27. So issue relating to huge domestic public debt held by the banks, non-bank finance companies, and the public. This is National Savings Scheme. Banks are holding around up to 15 trillion rupees. So huge amount, trillion. 1,000 billion is 1 trillion. So this huge amount, basically, as you know, the banks are required to hold around 17 to 22% of their time and demand liabilities in the form of securities. This is we call SLR, statutory liquidity requirement. That is around 20%. But basically, banks are, as you know, 54% of investment of the banks are in the government securities. It means that banks have almost crowded out the private sector. They have crowded out the commodity sector. That is why this is our economy, even the agriculture, the most important sector, the SMEs, the micro, they are not getting not more than 1, 2, 3%. All finances are going to the government. This is the main issue. And this is basically increasing our problem day by day. So currently, 3 months T-bill rate is so. The another issue is that the rate of borrowing by the government from the banking system is very, very high. You know, it is 15.6% on at 3 months T-bill only. Very, very. And this is basically with this 60 basic point, base point above the policy rate. Policy rate is very high at this time. Similarly, 7.8 trillion out of the total was held by the State Bank up to 2019. So another issue happened with the Pakistan, that now the State Bank has been prohibited to lend to the government up to 2019. The State Bank lending was 7.8 trillion, and then it was asked to reprofile its debt. Reprofile means that debt held by the central bank, by the State Bank, will be given now to the private banks. This is very strange. Strange, and all banks are private. It means that banks will be doing so huge risk-free investment, sorry, and getting so high return, 15.6%. So now, accordingly, from 2019 and onward, State Bank is reprofiling the debt. It means that the debt held by it is being given now to the commercial banks. Now it is around 6 trillion. This shift at a normally high rate, leading to increasing debt burden on the public. Now, another problem created was the State Bank of Pakistan Act 2021. You might have heard last year. It was that basically it was autonomy of the State Bank, but it was, to me at least, it was not autonomy. It was something else. A problem for Pakistan started in 1990s when the issuance of ad hoc treasury bill that carried the rate of 0.5% was replaced by the market rate. And this was also on compulsion of the IMF. This is very strange that even in Fed in America, such bills are given, or the loan are given to the government at the rate of around 5%, 0.5%. But here we were asked to go to the market, and then we know that the rate was so high that it went up to 16%. The situation exacerbated by the SBP Amendment Act 2022. A ban has been imposed on direct borrowing of the government from the central bank. SBP prohibited to lend the government even in case of liquidity crunch. It means that if there is no liquidity with the banks, SBP would be lending to the banks to enable them to lend to the government. This you may see what is the rationale in this, but it happened. It is to enrich the banks at the cost of public. It means, you know, that even 3 months bill, as I said earlier, the rate was 15.6%, and this was the direct earning for the banks. So now we need to, this is basically last part, revisiting the policy perspective. Money, first of all, money as a social phenomenon, its supply and creation to be managed by the state with the help of the central bank. The state must have access to the social money, and the financing and the exchange rates have to be managed keeping with the reality. Central bank autonomy falls under 3 categories: administrative autonomy, regulatory autonomy, and monetary policy autonomy. No foreign or individual, foreign company or individual person must be interfering in any of the 3 areas. Instead, there should be institutional channel for coordination and cooperation. Money supply and monetary management has to be under rational and strict control of an independent board comprising economists and finance experts. The central bank borrowing has been the most popular tool used by many advanced and developed countries, even the recent crisis of COVID. Surrendering the government's right of borrowing from the central bank has deprived the government from the most effective and most popular tool of the world to deal with the economic recession. The Council of Ideology Pakistan in report 1980 had recommended that the state bank might provide necessary accommodation to the government for medium and long term. SBP amendments must be repealed or amended properly with the following points. 1, monetary policy must be framed in line with the fiscal policy. It means the monetary policy in isolation cannot meet challenges. It can only support fiscal and structural policies, which are the real tools to address economic issues. State bank may be financing the government in case of any serious emergency. Only then state bank can make and implement a workable plan and become a role model of OIC member countries to transform their whole economic and financial system to Islamic principle. So now the guidelines. I have some. These guidelines basically we see from different commissions report. As I said earlier, there are commission, there are many committees. They themselves have given many guidelines, and these guidelines are the basically once the panel of bankers and economists and 6 working groups in the state bank with a detailed work and report, and then report of the Council of Islamic Ideology, then Raja Zafar Haq Commission report, then the Hanfi Sab Commission report, then Task Force of Ministry of Finance, and then Task Force of Ministry of Law. That was Dr. Mahmood, late Mahmood Abdul Ghazi. Very, very important. They suggested the legal framework and the law on elimination of the system. Then SBP may constitute a committee of economists, scholars, and professionals, we call CSP, for devising the transformation plan to suggest a possible way out for all types of business and transactions of the banks and non-bank companies. Now, what should be strategy? A high-powered committee or task force for strategy planning, comprising experts in finance, economics, accounting, legal, Sharia matters that must take benefit of the work already done by various commissions. It may prepare a blueprint or model of all banking and finance transactions by practical illustration and implementation guidelines. It may also share success stories of banks and companies that transformed to Islamic principle. Then there has to be a coordination and implementation committee, may have representation in the State Banks Committee that will be working only for the banking system. The most importantly, there are proper gap and impediment identification. There are many gaps that should be identified and filled. And these gaps are with regard to legal reforms. The main law, there is no law yet in the Pakistan about Islamization as we see in Malaysia and in Iran and many other countries. There are no such law in Pakistan. Then regulatory reforms for implementation, stakeholders approach, not the shareholder. The implementation, very, very important. The most strategic part, this company, as I suggested, its work should not be finished after giving the suggestion. They should be involved in implementation also. Some members of the task force must be in this committee also. Alternative tools to be explored, a few suggestions. Banks financing, money and credit creation, very, very important. We need to move from top to bottom. First, decide how banks will be creating money. Then all transactions by Islamic banks must base on any real production, business, and varied service contracts, even in case of tawarruk if needed. Current fractional reserve system to be replaced with 100% reserve system in 10 to 12, 15 years or so, keeping in view the debt stock already issued. That could be for 15 years, even in cases, some cases it could be for 20 years. So it has to be replaced gradually. Amount of money and credit has to be in commensurate with availability of goods and services in the economy plus reserve currencies potential in next few years as per Salam, Istisna, and Jawala contracts. Basically, Islamic law has a provision for currency more than the goods and services in the economy, and a very, very, very a good reality, I think, very important that the policy holder should use. Another suggestion is that for government debt, there has to be a growth rate linked sukuk or bonds or certificate with and without adding a part of inflation. For example, nominal GDP plus 50 to 100% of GDP deflator. It means it could be 20%, 25%, then 50%, and 100% if these instruments are for 5, 10 more years. Then financing in local and foreign currencies to be taken from the banks. Now it means that banks may be financing the government individually or syndicate. There has to be a syndicate of the banks that may finance any project of the government for different development and infrastructure projects. The banks might be allowed to transfer such funding to private investor, also including overseas investor. It means once the project will be taken by a bank or a syndicate of banks, and then banks will be allowed to transfer this investment to individual investor anywhere within the country or abroad. Then capital market and corporate debt, very important area. Corporate debt from banks for working capital, trade, finance, and project debt, investment in debt scheme, and instrument to be transformed for this purpose. Corporate entities need to be encouraged and enabled to take finance from Islamic banks like Ijara, diminishing musharka, venture capital, participation term certificates, closed and open and mutual fund. Then screening criteria. So currently we have the ratio around 33%. It is strange that this was in the early stage, but now all Islamic banks have much excess liquidity. Now this ratio must be reduced. So these financial ratios of debt to be changed periodically to render the debt ratio to 0 by 2027, except in case of compulsion in international trade. All Islamic banks generally claim excess liquidity with them. They are wrongfully, particularly, they are transferring liquidity to conventional banks by way of organized work. This is very strange. On the one side, they get deposits from the bank for Islamic business, and then they transfer these funds to the conventional banks by way of the work. Then all this has created Islamic banks credibility issue. In country with 97% Muslim population, why Islamic bank could not take over the market in 20 years since 2002? A big issue and serious question, why Islamic banks not able to realize the objective of better distribution of income, profits to depositors are almost half. Currently, you are researcher, mashallah. Currently, deposits profit given by Islamic banks are almost half of the rate what commercial banks are given. This is very strange. Not only full-fledged banks, but even those banks who have windows. Their commercial branches, if they are given 10%, their Islamic branches are given 5%. Very strange. Islamic banks to consider the end result, maalat, of the financing activity for realizing Sharia compliance in spirit and for desired socio-economic impact. For investment in infrastructure and mega social projects, the banks may establish consortia to fund such mega projects jointly. It will serve the dual purpose of investment and profitability as well as social finance. Change in paradigm and policy and the direction of Islamic banking to serve as a business and trade intermediaries, not only doing the business of cash, earning cash. For investment in infrastructure and mega social projects, the banks may establish consortium, as we discussed earlier also. So and the last one, the requirement of research and development work. Universities and research institutions should be involved in research and development work for survey for profit margin and rental rates in various sectors and business, suggesting benchmark rates for financing of major sectors in the economy based on the market rates for various sectors and transactions. Then preparing illustration of various banking and finance transactions so that the same could be Sharia compliant in spirit and also helpful in social justice. Sorry. Review of instruments and products approved by Sharia boards and implemented by the Islamic banks for a redressal of the problem, if any. Then research is needed, giving for practical suggestions for the parliamentarian, Sharia courts, and higher judiciary as and when required. Practical training and orientation of the professionals, Sharia board and board of directors of the companies, their members, product developers, and middle and senior level management practitioners of Islamic banks. And this was all from my side. Again, I would like to say that I could not give much time here on foreign, because even in local cases are problem so many that if we resolve those issues, that would be great. And with this presentation, I would like to request, as Fahim Khan said, that the economists, the finance experts all over the world, particularly the research institutions, are requested to basically suggest how this plan, the task given by the court could be implemented, or at least how we could prepare and ask the government, ask the state bank, ask the policymakers, said rather than going for appeal, you may please use this, and with this you will be able to resolve the problem of economy, because at this stage, Pakistan economy has basically a problem, and all this problem is due to high cost debt, even low cost debt. Our around 55% of the federal revenues are being spent on debt servicing, too much. And the more serious issue is that for domestic borrowing, we pay only the return interest, while the capital is rolled over. So with this, all this submission, I thank again Prof. Hanif and other professors of the institute. Okay, thank you, Allah Hafiz. So I should stop sharing.
So, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Dr. Ayub. I mean, I know it
I took, I think 5-10 minutes more.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
you know, I'm just on behalf of everybody listening. I think you have presented your slides. You know, if you are agreeable, we will share these slides with everybody who is present. Maybe through the you know, through the chat, we can put it if you are agreeable to this. And I think you have really covered vast ground. I mean, firstly, the historical background of the evolution of Islamic banking development in Pakistan, right up to the present. You have actually also in great detail presented the Federal Shariah Court you know, judgment, as well as the appeal by the State Bank, and giving, you know, a lot of points on what were the issues raised by the State Bank. And then you have actually given quite a comprehensive proposal of what to do. I mean, you talked about the transformation process, you talk about you know, some of the issues that any you know, working group needs to look into, and especially the strategic initiatives at the end, and even identifying, you know, the different things that need to be done, not only legal, but also you even mentioned some education and research initiatives.
Yeah.
So a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you again, Dr. Ayub. We have quite a few colleagues from academia, as well as I think, for example, Prof. Najdat is one leg in the academia and the other leg in the you know, in the industry. Yeah, he was with Central Bank and now maybe playing another role. And so I now would like to actually.
In the past. It was in the
He
past.
also member of Mashallah Yofi.
Yes.
Board, yeah.
So I would now like to open the floor. We have about half an hour, and so we may not resolve everything today, but at least we can identify some of the areas that we could be working on. And certainly on our part, we will take your proposals, you know, in the last 5 or 10 slides, and look at them, because these are actually a very good suggestions. So I open the session to participate.
Should I open?
Yeah, we open. Now we welcome anyone who would like to, you know, if you would like to make a comment or ask clarification or ask a question, please. The session is open.
Yeah, actually, we would like to learn from you people any other possible alternatives. Where was that?
Yeah. So from the implementation part onwards, you have got very detailed, yeah, revisiting the policy, and then you are giving strategic initiatives. Yeah. I mean, I think this is already a very guideline for the transformation. It's very, very, you know, detailed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So please, anyone in the audience,
These are actually, this is very new thing. That's growth rate linked instrument or sukuk. You, particularly those professors who have expertise of the jurisprudence, may like to discuss to what extent it is possible, it is workable. Because I know, I remember that in 1980s, when we were preparing the report of the Council of Ideology, fortunately, I joined State Bank at that time. So this proposal was given that for government financing, there has to be instruments based on the GDP growth rate. But at that time, the council has not accepted this idea based on the argument that any such thing should be based on the actual result of the activity.
Right.
So it means it was the principle of musharaka or mudaraba. If someone gives money to the government, so the government should be sharing. But what to do here? Government is borrowing just to repay the debt taken earlier. So to stop gap, what we say at this point of time, we need some extraordinary in this situation. So we have suggested, I know that some people, some professor, especially Prof. Bas Mirakhor, discussed this. I know that he emphasizes much on sharing,
risk sharing.
Yeah, risk sharing. He is very basically he is right. Now, but he has also discussed this issue also sometime. I don't remember when, but he had suggested that it has to be linked to the any growth rate. It could be GDP, it could be GNP. Then why linking it with the GDP, then the issue of the inflation. Or there are many types of inflation. It is consumer price, it is sensitive, that is a large number of types of inflation. And then as economists, I suggest that it should be used as GDP deflator. So it means that if government takes funds from the government and say that the nominal GDP plus GDP deflator in full up to 100%. If the bonds or instruments are 5 years and above, if these are less than 5 years, the addition could be reduced from 100 to 90, 80, 50, or even for it if they are. But now the issue more important is that can it be accepted conceptually? In my view, it can be accepted, and Sharia scholars should be accepted. Particularly, I know you might be knowing, in Pakistan, there are a number of modes being used by Pakistan and approved by the Sharia board where banks are getting almost fixed return. And this is running finance by way of running musharaka. In running musharaka, there are two-stage profit sharing ratio. In one stage, the ratio is for getting a target profit rate, for example, 10%. And then the ratio of the bank is reduced to 0.00001. And all additional profit goes to the client. So my view is, if that is permissible, this the instrument that we wish to innovate to linking public sector financing with the GNP growth rate should be accepted. Now the Sharia scholars may come to our help. So these are my views. Any one of you may please be discussing any other related issues, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ayub. Really when I look at all these points that you have raised, these are all by themselves good seminar topics to be presented and discussed at great length. Before again I invite everybody, but before that, just to say that I find it very odd that you have legislation that doesn't allow the government to borrow from the central bank. I find
Yeah.
I find that very
important.
very
Basically, the problem is of involvement of IMF, and it is our national problem that our exports are almost very nil, and we are importing. This is the issue. So although God has given all types of season, all types of very fertile land, but there are policies, and most importantly, the policy is instability. So then, whenever I remember that in the late 80s, when there are problem in Malaysia and Southeast countries, even in Malaysia there was capital problem, and these institutions had came to the help, but then your Prime Minister Mahathir said, no, we ourselves will resolve the issue, and it was good, and we know that you resolved the issue within 3 or 4 years. So the countries like India, like Malaysia, like many other countries, they did not involve these institutions, and they are now better than. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, we started this from 1958. Very strange. From 1958 to 21, we have 23 packages with IMF. 23. So when we get funds from them, then we have to accept, and one condition I think was that the state bank must be autonomous, and autonomy, it was already autonomous. So for autonomy, a new bill was submitted before the parliament, and as per that bill, now State Bank has been prohibited to finance the government, and even if banks, commercial banks, do not have much liquidity, so the central bank will first lend them, and then they will. I don't know. There are some bookish theories, and these theories are that then the public, the individual saver will be benefiting. So I don't know to what extent this bookish theory has been, but this is another issue. Main at this point of time, we're discussing about the alternatives to interest for our different sectors of the economy.
Thank you, Dr. Ayub. We have a question from Amrin Sultan. What are the prospects of Zakat playing a role to finance government expenditures?
Waqf.
Well, the questioner is asking Zakat. So, I suppose you can also, answer it on the basis.
Yeah, Waqf has great prospects. But as I said earlier, before the start of this presentation, in Pakistan, no research work has been almost very negligible. No research work has been done to use the institution of Waqf for all this, even for social welfare, what to talk of for economic development.
Yeah.
So Waqf could be used, particularly if we are discussing the banking sector. Even banks can use the Waqf. So it means that all banks may create Waqf from their own amount, and then many people who are well off, they might be donating for this, and from this a large part of the job that government has to do, but the government is not able to do for paucity of fund, can be done by the Waqf. So you are right, there has to be a part of the research how the institution of waqf can be used not only for social, particularly in health, in education, and alleviation of poverty, but also for financing the government. It could be used, and a large number of studies I have seen in the international research, but not particularly in Pakistan. And it is I submitted earlier. I am now in the process of doing this research, and for the same project, I visited Turkey. I and my colleague, Dr. Khurram Khan, we visited Turkey. To what extent we can use their experience. So, as I said earlier, we will wish that you and other persons who are particularly done research work on research may help us in suggesting legal and organizational framework for the institution of waqf.
I mean, just to maybe answer Amreen, I think one of the challenges is that, zakat as a percentage of GDP,
Zakat.
yeah, would be very, very minimal, and therefore for it to become a source of finance may not be there. That is
zakat.
That is what Ayub is talking about, the waqf.
Ayub are talking waqf, but it is zakat.
Yeah.
So zakat and waqf are almost the same, with the difference that zakat is compulsory and waqf is not compulsory. So it is fortunate that in 1980s we have Zakat and Ushr Ordinance 1980, and at that time Zakat was deducted compulsorily from the 11 assets, and that was then distributed the whole country, both for the consumption of the poor and also for their rehabilitation. But then this system was politicized. Now that zakat is very small amount and very important. The issue is that zakat, if even we develop the system, it would only be used for the zakat recipients as indicated in the Quran.
Yeah.
But the main issue, our issue at this point of time, is how to transform the huge public debt. Very, very important. So zakat is good. It could help the government in resolving in its duties to feed the hunger, to alleviate the poverty, to provide employment to the very poor people, to educate them. But this also requires a lot of work. Unfortunately, as I told earlier, the system was started in 1980s, but now that stands, there is system, but that system basically has been hijacked by different other policies and programs. For example, a government came and used zakat fund, gave some more fund and make it another scheme for the poor. And main objective was the political. So the other people came, they made their own. And recently, our previous government, they transformed it to Ehsas program. Actually, the money was the same of zakat and all these things, but then it was politicized. So when any program, how good it may be, it cannot serve properly if there are some problem in its management. So you are right, zakat, waqf, all other social finance tools can be used for helping the government, because government is not able to do its duties with respect to welfare of the people, or even with respect to the necessary expenses like basic education, basic health. So those people who are well off, they have to come forward by way of Zakat and Waqf and other charity institutions, but this help would be, this help should be. Our Islamic law actually requires that a person who is seeing that his neighbor is hungry, he has to help him or her. But our problem at this point of time is more than this social finance.
Yeah, agree. The Dr. Nizam, you have a
yes.
you want to make? Yeah. please.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. Ayub. Looking at your presentation, there's a lot of things here. However, the one thing that I interested and quite curious about is the fact that the amount of the public debt at 2022 is more than 43 trillion rupees. And as you said, if 55% of government public revenues is used to just service the debt, then I think this is a very serious matter. And on top of that, you have a situation where the government cannot borrow from the central bank. This is like choking the public sector to death. Yeah, and I know that IMF packages always come with this structural adjustment program, SAPs, right? But how come this was agreed? Because this is clearly against the well-being of the government, well-being of the people, and on top of that,
it is not thinkable even. You are right. It's not thinkable even.
The market rate is 15-16%. This is definitely unsustainable. And forget about Islamic banking. This is the most serious matter. And you cannot deal with suku musyarakah, or these are down in the list. Not even zakat or wakaf. You have to think about structural adjustment in terms of the money creation, in terms of the structure of borrowing of the government. So these are serious matters that I hope the people in Pakistan need to look at it. For example, we can look at the proposal by Professor Chapra in terms of how money creation, because the government cannot borrow from the central bank, but the central bank and the private financial institution can create money, which is the sovereign authority of the state of issuing.
And on the basis of Mudarba, you are right.
Lend it back to the government for 15%. That is ridiculous. I mean, I cannot understand how can this be happening. But this is the most serious issue that I think our friends in Pakistan need to deal with, because if 55% of the government revenue is just to service the debt, and the debt is going up at 16% every year, and the interest rate on those debt is about 15-16%, it's only, I mean, this is a serious sign for potential collapse.
I'm wondering whether Dr. Nejdat, when Dr. Ayub says that he's looking for Awqaf to play a role, everybody will think of today's Turkey and historical Ottoman. Is there any feature in from your side that you may want to share with us, if any?
Thank you, brother Professor Hanif. Actually, we have a rich experience from Ottoman time. Brother Professor Muhammad Ayub now searching for it. Actually, I didn't make a particular search on it, but as I know and observe, in Turkey, there are two kinds of wakafs. One type is inherited from Ottoman time, and the other established in Republican time. And the assets remained from Ottoman Vakıfs are administered by a General Directorate of Vakıfs in Ankara. Most probably brother Professor Muhammad Ayub visited. They administered those assets, and recently they established two private universities sponsored by the assets inherited from Ottoman time Vakıfs.
Karate University. Yeah.
One of those universities in medicine, and the other is a general university, Fatih Sultan Mehmet Vakıf University, and the Valide Sultan Medicine University. Those are sponsored by the assets inherited from Ottoman era. Also, there are many shops. For example, the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul is a vakaf. In the past, unfortunately, those assets were used with low rents, but recently the rents are updated, and the directorate trying to administer in better ways. The new vakıfs has two functions. One is giving scholarships to the students. The other is also establishing universities. You know, in Turkey, there are two kinds of universities, owned by the state and owned by the vakıfs or foundations. The private universities depend on foundations established in Republican era, except those two, as I have mentioned in the beginning. These that I know and can say about Vakıf in Turkey, brother Hanif. Regarding the government borrowing issue, brother Muhammad Nizam Barom is talking about or wondering about it, but it is same in Turkey and most probably same in Malaysia. This is the system, you know, there is open market operations. The rationale behind is to discipline the borrowing of the government. The government cannot borrow directly from the central bank. The treasury issues bonds or sukuk, or we say a lease certificate, and those bonds and lease certificates are invested by private banks or government-owned banks by the banking system. And the banking system brings those bonds to the central bank in open market operations to get liquidity. This is the system all around the world, most probably same in Malaysia. Thank you.
Maybe the only difference, just to make a connection to what Dr. Ayub was mentioning, you know, in 97, 98, we were lucky in Malaysia. Well, not lucky, because we had it in our regulation that we are not allowed to borrow from external sources very easily.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we had certain limits. And also in the case of Malaysia, we really had a very small percentage of short-term loans overseas. So when the crisis hit, we were not hit as hard as Indonesia or Thailand or even Korea. So we had certain things in our system that prevented us from being exposed to, to international loan, short-term loan especially. And that was built into our regulatory framework. So, the person who thought of that, maybe in the 50s or 60s, need to be given a posthumous award, national award for protecting the interests of the country. Okay, we have actually come 1.5 hours, a little bit more than that. I open it to anyone else who has any comment. Sheikh Mustafa or any of the others who are still with us. We still have almost everybody who joined with us.
Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Thank you very much. I would like first to thank Prof. Muhammad Ayub. I think I agree with Prof. Aslam, the moderator, that the presentation was very comprehensive and it covered a wider area. So I would just like to divert a little bit and look at what we could be expecting in the future. Now, if you look at the Islamic history, especially during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who also tried to eliminate riba, there was a preparation of almost 23 years. And this preparation included the institutional arrangements at that time. The institutions have to be prepared. The irada, the will of the people have to be prepared. The mindset have to be prepared. The right kind of market has to be made available for those changes. Now, I appreciate the role of scholars today to, look at some of the things that we face and those challenges. But much of those reactions are basically knee-jerk reaction because, like you said, since the 80s, these ideas were promulgated. But you find that because of weak institutions that we have in the Muslim world, because of the mindset that we have, and as many of us know that the central banks, the sovereignty is not within the country. There are shadow system controlling those institutions outside the Muslim world. So certain things require huge political wills and certain things require some institutions to prepare. So I'm thinking now that we may need to involve universities in this kind of, big projects, the role of universities, the role of scholars, which you rightly pointed, because now, Prof. Muhammad, as a scholar, you are leading this discussion. And it has been in our history that scholars have been in the forefront of making those changes. Now, if these projects could be translated within the universities, what I'm trying to say here is we need to prepare generations. And that means it has an impact on our curriculum. Our curriculum cannot be preparing students just to go and do what the market is doing. And so by doing this, we are prolonging those changes. So we need to have meaningful changes within the university to address some of those issues which you have raised, the issue of riba, the issue of debt. And unfortunately, our curriculum at the moment, I don't know to what extent we are able to prepare those generations of students and scholars who will take over and make meaningful changes within the society. And I have seen this in many countries, even like Najid was saying in Turkey, there has been an attempt to reduce the interest rates. But the reaction, because the institutions are not supportive, there has been little, responses to that. So only the leader has been in the forefront, moving those things. So I think we need to look into the role of our academic institutions towards those changes. The other second thing, which I think is very fundamental, we know that in the conventional system, interest rate is not just only in the banking system, but it ties all the markets together because it's loan. it ties the product market, it ties the capital market within the financial system. So that means the entire operation, although you may begin, and I agree what you said earlier on, that not only the banking laws, but looking at the other side of the economy, which is the way forward. So riba has become part of the life of the people. In fact, they don't even use the name riba, they change other names. Service charge, what charge, all kinds of charges are within the system. So I think we need a comprehensive way of addressing those issues, and we need to prepare new generation to have a complete blueprint rather than just focusing on those legal aspects, which are very important, but we need an overall revamp of the entire system to prepare new generation. And once again, thank you very much, Prof. Muhammad Ayub. It was really very comprehensive, and it gave us a total understanding of the situation at home. Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. I think you said it very well. At least on our part, our central purpose of organizing the session is to get a better understanding of what's happening, in Pakistan, a proper understanding of the evolution and the current status of this Federal Shariah Court judgment, and then the state bank. And I think we got a very good picture of this. And I think the bonus that we received is those wonderful suggestions that Dr. Ayub has listed out. It's a comprehensive plan. Maybe on our side, what we need to do, and maybe Dr. Nizam is here, he may plan something, is for us to look at those issues that Dr. Ayub has listed out and see how we can actually try to have discussions on our end, including some of our colleagues from the central bank, maybe from the industry, from the government, and to see what our views of our people here are. And then maybe this can be passed on to you, so that it gives some added points for you to take to your working group. I believe this is what you are hoping for from our side, to give inputs that may come from from Malaysian officials as well as academics, right? I'm assuming this is what the idea of Prof and yourself. Yeah. Is somebody wanting to say something? It looks like. Is it Dr. Aslam? Are you
anything in Lalpete? You want to come in Lalpete?
Yeah.
I think he has to mute. Can you mute him? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So anyone else? Last maybe comment, if you have anything to ask or clarify, or you would like to see happen, anyone?
Alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah, can I be heard? I think so, yeah.
Yes, Dr. Riyasat, yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dr. Muhammad Ayub. I thought it was a very good presentation, like everybody has already mentioned. It gives you a very good overview of what's happening. And the good thing is we get the legal side as well as the economic side, as well as, the government's perspective on everything. I want to ask a very general question. Looking at the trends, especially in recent years, and the limitations imposed by, foreign institutions on the central bank's ability to maneuver and manage the economy, do you think that actually this is creating a stronger dependence on a riba-based monetary system? Do you feel that, you're losing, Pakistan in general is moving towards that, in that direction, as opposed to a riba-free economy? I feel that if we look at the roadmap and the progress, it looks like we're headed towards a riba-free economy. Like when I first saw the title, I thought that's what it would be about. But looking at the deeper details, looking at some of the tendencies and trends, despite, of course, some of the mechanisms and ideas that you have shared. But looking at the trends, I can't help but feel a little pessimistic about how things are looking. So I just wanted to put this general question to you and, just get a feel for what do you internally feel about it? Thank you very much.
So actually, at this point of time, very strange situation as you discussed. The compulsion and the debt taken by the governments time to time. So this is why I think that the State Bank and the government are in favor of going to appeal, although from religious parties and other people there was a lot of pressure that no one should go for appeal and implement the judgment. But these issues are very serious. But the more serious is that if do not revert to this real solution, we cannot survive, as you indicated in earlier your talk. Because we will be unable to service this huge amount of debt and the huge rate of interest on this for how long? Ultimately, we have to come forward. So one possibility could be that the State Bank now submits a plan for converting the banking system in 4 or 5 years, and then resolving the problems of domestic and foreign debt through some other way. And I don't know what could happen, but the issues are very, very serious. You are right. And what as a researcher I can do, I should be doing, and what as a researcher you are doing. So in this way, I, Prof. Fahim and other people here in Pakistan basically are doing effort to suggest to the government, to the State Bank, as I myself had been in the State Bank. I even yesterday discussed the matter with the people of the State Bank. The issue is that a firm stand has to be taken in national interest. To what extent you can or anyone can basically accept the foreign direction. It is not basically, it goes against the very theory of survival. So Pakistan is a very geostrategic situation, has the situation, all these things. So let's pray and that we are basically in the problem and we could resolve this problem. So whatever I could do, I have basically, I could say, I could suggest. I tried to cover that in my presentation. Other things are very, very serious, as you said.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much, Dr. Ayub.
Of course, we will be, we'll wish you people, your brothers and sisters, to come forward as Dr. Fahim Khan emailed you. So there actually we have to prepare a prototype of detailed transactions for corporate debt, transactions for public debt, for private personal debt, and all other things, any other institution, even in case of social finance like Zakat and Waqf, if researchers, basically the problem is that our education institutions are not producing the right persons for policy making in Pakistan or anywhere in the Muslim country. Even a person who is reading economics and the classical economics in our university, can we accept that it will make policy in line with the principle of Sharia? No, at all. Because we are basically telling them to maximize profit one way or the other. Similarly in marketing, similarly in business, all other things. So we have to basically revive our education, our training, and all this is based on the basically the approach, the stakeholder approach in education, in business, in corporate business. So thanks to all of you for your comments.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayub. I think after this, I will hand back to Dr. Nizam, maybe who will give his last few words. But I think certainly on my part, I think based on my exchange of emails with Prof. Fahim, certainly we will want to take the suggestions that you are making for further discussion on our side. So at least as you know, we can do on our side, we can have discussions with colleagues, you know, from the central bank, as well as you know, people in other agencies and so on, just to inputs. So this is something that I think we can do, and inshallah we will do. And as I said, the other thing may be all those areas that you have identified, you know, that we need to have blueprint or some work done. This can be things that maybe our students, not only in IIUM in Islamabad, but maybe, you know, Dr. Nejdat in Turkey, Sheikh Mustafa also now in Turkey, and in Indonesia, we can make these issues part and parcel of the research agenda, because this is a real world situation. I'm sure it's not only in Pakistan that many of those issues are relevant, but also everywhere else. Yeah, we need to have a clear, you know, options to what we have today. Issues raised by Dr. Nizam on the, you know, on the debt levels and on money creation, and you know, it reminds me of this book that we reviewed together with Sheikh Mustafa and other colleagues in IIUM. You know, Professor Omar Chapra in his Towards a Just Monetary System was talking about this whole process of money creation and how it looked so you know, unfair that a system in which private banks are able to make money and, you know, and basically appropriate profits. And I think we see that so clearly in the way you've explained it, you know, the case in Pakistan. So this is something that needs a lot of work. So I hope that, you know, this session that we've organized, you know, has met its objectives. That is to give a picture of what's happening in Pakistan. And at least our commitment is that we will try to further discuss and to try and give inputs to all of you colleagues in Pakistan on this way forward that you have very nicely laid out. So with that, I take the opportunity to thank you, Ayub, for spending your time, and you know, to all others for joining and you know, listening to what has been said. Please convey our salams to Prof. Fahim and also to Prof. Anis. And we hope.
Salam to all brothers and sisters.
Alaikum salam. So once again, Jazakallah khair. I now give it back to Dr. Nizam for the last word.
Thank you very much, Prof. Aslam, and thank you very much as well to Professor Muhammad Ayub for the presentation. So basically, Prof. Aslam has summarized the session very, very sufficiently. So I don't have to say anything else. Inshallah, if we have events in the future, discussion sessions, we will inform everyone on the event, and hopefully we have good participation in our future sessions. So until we meet again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let us end our.
Walaikum salam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.